Hi, folks. Dave, the Honest Audiophile. We'll give a couple moments for some people to join in on the chat, and then we'll get right into the reviews. I want to thank everybody for joining on this fantastic Saturday, which is Valentine's Day. Thank you very much for everybody showing up. It is much appreciated. And hopefully you have a great time with the love of your life, or the sweetheart, the person you enjoy the most spending life with. Hopefully you have an enjoyable time and a great weekend. And hopefully you have just a great weather to enjoy all of the love that is in the air. Want to make sure that everything is all good and set up for the live stream, and it is listed as public. I know everybody's got a lot of things going on today, so we will get started right now with the live stream and move things right along. Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Today we're taking a look into two studio-minded headphones, the Atom Audio H200 and the NF Acous NH20. And I'll be comparing it to my analytical reference, the Austrian Audio Hayek 60. We're also going to take a look at the KB Ear Tourbillion Pro, which is an IEM with a very different tuning philosophy, but a fun one to explore. So I'm going to spend a few moments on each and then wrap it up with some comparisons and final thoughts. So let's start with the Atom Audio H200. The Atom Audio H200 is a $180 studio-minded headphone that aims for accurate but listenable presentation. I bought this with my own funds thanks to YouTube members and viewer support. So thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It helps to buy some gear. It uses a 40 millimeter PEEK or peak dynamic driver, 32 ohms, and it has a rated response of 2 hertz to 23.5 kilohertz. On paper, it looks like a studio tool, and in practice, it kind of is, but with a more natural grounded balance. It has a simple, professional, no fluff unboxing experience. You just get the essentials, the headphones, a detachable cable, and a little bit of documentation. Comes in this gray and yellow box. You get some pictures and some specs and information on it. It's really nothing too spectacular on the box itself. The headphones look like this. You do have a detachable cable, which you can plug into either side. And it's a very, very long cable. It terminates into a screw-off 3.5 to 1/4 inch adapter. Cable is okay. I mean, it works in a studio setting, kind of long for a setting like this here at the desk. Rubberized, feels durable, does have a little bit of the swervy curvies, but not too bad. The headphones themselves are very lightweight and solidly built, durable plastic, a little bit of a metal on the yokes here. It's a practical design. It's built for daily studio use, and it doesn't fold up, which is kind of a bummer. It does have nice slides, and it's not the heaviest, so you can get some pretty good listening time out of it. Has L and R on the inside, so you know which one is which. And it just pops on the head. I don't need it to be on the largest setting for it to be snug. And it just kind of disappears on the head. Comfort is excellent at first. It has soft pads, and they're fairly big. You can get your fingers inside them about 4 knuckles. So it's fairly tall, but it's not the widest. It has a nice balance. It disperses the weight very nicely. But there is moderate clamp. Now, the clamp did lessen a little bit over time, and I did stretch it out a little bit. So it's a little bit softer than it was when I first got them. But at the same time, it becomes very noticeable after about an hour of listening, and it becomes somewhat uncomfortable. It's great for short sessions, less ideal for long ones. Isolation is actually really good for a close back. It's enough for household noise or quiet studio settings. It does a decent job when monitoring. Probably about 55-60% of outside noise is being blocked. It muffles them pretty good. It's not going to completely block things out, but it does a good job in that regard. The source pairing is really good. There's not any real major issues with this. It's not very picky with sources. Some things that did stand out, a little bit bassier, heavier tracks were a little bit muddled and confused. At times, it kind of depended on the source. So do be careful with that if you have something that's a little bit heavier and thicker on the bottom end. But we'll get into that as to how you can alter that with the H200, because this does have a secret sauce that Adam Audio provided. Also, a more analytical neutral source is more preferred for this, but it does work on everything. And it's easy to drive. I had no issues whatsoever, even with dongles. Driving them. For the bass, it's very clean, controlled, and linear. It has a more true monitor bass. It's very tight and honest, but at the same time, on certain settings and with certain sources, the bass can get a little bit uncontrolled and just a little bit hard to differentiate on more complex bassy tracks. But overall, it's a good bass. I find it to be very competent, especially for a monitoring purpose, not so much for more listenable. And then in the mids, there's a nice transition going from the upper bass to the lower mid range. It's very smooth. There's no dips, as natural body and realism. And overall, I find that that little bit of more body that the bass has, which sometimes gets a little out of control on those bassy, more complex tracks, adds in a little bit of fullness to the mid range. And then there's a gentle rise in the upper mid range, and it's just a little bit on the verge of being too much at times in the uppers. It's very clear and very articulate, but occasionally it can be just a little too much. But for the most part, I found that the mids had nice tonality and a good amount of air and space and enough energy throughout. Good. They're a good mid, just a little bit on the border of being too much. Treble, there's a little bit of energy around 6 to 8K. That's very crisp, airy, and detailed. Sometimes a little bit too zingy, but doesn't really get into that harsh and fatiguing mode. But like that upper mid-range, it's on the verge for me. It can be just a little bit. And then as you go into the further aspects of the treble past 12K, there's a little bit of a smooth downward slope, and it stays open without becoming artificial. And it is a good controlled treble, but it has a little bit of a tendency to maybe be a little bit on the stuffy side up top, because it's trying to be less fatiguing and more controlled. So it puts more of a focus on the upper mids and lower treble region, which then makes that to be a little bit too zingy and energetic at times. So it's a hard one to really. It depends on what you prefer. If you prefer upper mids and lower treble presence, then you'll enjoy that. But if you like a more extended treble, this could sound a little bit on the safe side. It's a neutral, bright, natural warmth and body. It's got some analytical side to it, but it also leans more to the enjoyable side. When it comes to the soundstage is actually pretty good. I was rather surprised at how well it does for a close back of showing small, medium, and large. Doesn't really get into that grand size. And then the imaging is really good within its segments, and it moves things across very smoothly from side to side, and you can track exits and enters very well. Moving things around on the stage, you can go, that's there, that's there. And then imaging, it's not the most precise and accurate for a closed back headphone, but it's pretty. You can, like, it's right there and move it. It's in this very tight window of a space. Depth is pretty good. Layering is pretty good, except for when you get on those more complex tracks that will confuse things just a little bit and muddle them together slightly. But for the most part, it does a pretty good job with depth and layering. Detail retrieval is good for a $180 closeback headphone. You're not going to miss anything, especially when you're monitoring. It's going to give you all the information that you need. Resolution is good. It does have that tendency to be just a little bit on the cusp of being a little forced and being a little bit on the harsh side, but it doesn't ever really fully venture into that neighborhood. And then tone and timbre is very natural sound. I didn't have any issues determining tones and timbre. I found that it was very accurate in reproducing instruments and vocalists. Now the H200 has a unique product that's up its sleeve, and Atom Audio includes a VST. This is one of the most interesting parts of the H200 because it gives you a direct look at what Atom Audio intended the headphone to sound like. And it's not a fun EQ preset. It's a manufacturer authored correction curve that's built specifically for the H200. VSTs are different than EQ and any of the other DSPs and all that kind of stuff. VST, when it got applied in a bit perfect environment with Audiovana Studio, for me, I found that the bass gained a little bit more weight, a little bit more control, and it had a little bit lower mids body depth to it. And then the upper mids, where it was a little bit too much and on the cusp, became a little bit more smooth, and the treble became more refined and actually extended slightly. And I found that that imaging became a little bit more precise. Even if it was close before, with the VST, it became a little bit more precise. And I found that the VST, it doesn't change the H200's identity. It finishes it and completes it and refines it. The VST isn't meant to be neutral. It's not trying to hit Harman or diffuse field or IEF or even the honest target. It's trying to hit Atom's internal reference tuning. And the VST does that. And you can definitely hear the difference if you have a program that you can run the VST off of. Now, VST does not run off of everything. So you do have to be able to download the file from Atom's Audio and then use it in a program like Audiovana Studio. Use it with bit perfect settings, and you'll notice the difference. So why not tune the hardware to the VST curve in the first place? Well, I think Atom Audio realizes that there's physical tuning has limits. Studio headphones must work on any source, and so because VSTs don't work on everything, you have to be able to use it with other sources. And also, the VST is Atom's Audio's ideal tuning. It's not their universal tuning. And the VST is part of the value of the H200, and it only works in perfectly controlled environments. So the short version about the Atom Audio H200, in the stock variation, which is how most people will listen to it, it's a safe, neutral-ish, reliable, fun listen. And with the VST variant added in, it's the true refined version. So next up, let's talk about this headphone over here. And that is the Acous NH200. Comes in at $200. It's a dual magnetic circuit, dual cavity, 40 millimeter dynamic driver, 110 decibel sensitivity, 50 ohms, and it has a frequency response range of 5 hertz to 50 kilohertz. So the Acous has a more premium presentation. It comes with a nice case, you get all kinds of information. It's definitely a lot larger. And on the inside of it, you get a carrying case. Nice and flat, a little bit of branding on it. You got this zipper. And then you have an area for cables to sit and your headphones to sit, and they do lay flat, but they do not fold. So here's your headphones. They would lay like this. Obviously, you would take the cable off, and they lay flat like that. And overall, I don't mind this case. It definitely is well built, looks kind of cool. Plus, it's kind of shaped like a heart for Valentine's Day. Anyway, so you get a nice carrying case, something you don't get with the H200, and it's well built. I find that also you get two different cables. You get this shorter cable, and then you get this massively huge long cable, which is also very much like the H200 cable. And the other nice thing is it has entry on either left or right side, just like the H200. It does not fold, and it has a quite tight headband. I found that it's very solid and it's substantially well built. It has plastic yokes, plastic shells. There's a little bit of metal on it, and then you have a metal reinforced slider. But these are extremely, extremely small. So this is extended all the way. And let me show you the H200 extended all the way. And you can clearly see that the H200 has more room on the slider. I mean, there's a lot more room going down. And that's a problem. So the NH20 is very, very small, even on its largest setting. It barely fits my head. And I don't have a very big head. I can feel the pads pressing on my ears, and I hate that. I hate pads touching my ears. It's not very comfortable for me. I had to stretch this big time just to kind of fit, and I left it sitting over my speakers, over books, for days. Every single time that these came off my head, they were stretching, and they're just not very, very big. Now, I know that this is NF Acous's first attempt at a headphone. So hopefully, maybe if they remake one, redesign it, give it some longer slider here, and make the pads a little bit bigger. I like the feel of it. It's comfortable. And another touch, make them fold. I like them folding. So my Austrian Audio, these are extremely comfy, and they fold, and they also have plenty of room for larger heads. I do not need them to be even remotely close to the largest setting, and they fit me very, very well. So some areas of improvement that NF Acous can make, but overall the build of them is nice looking. I like the look and I like the feel of them. They feel solid, even though they are plastic. They're nice and lightweight. It feels substantial, but it's just extremely small. The weight isn't terribly bad. They are a little bit on the heavier side. At the Atom Audio H200 and these are very similar in weight. It feels like on my head. This headband could be a little bit more comfy, but for the most part, a decent build. Isolation is actually modest, but it's not very good, and that's because the odd fit disrupts the seal for me. So I really can't comment on how well they isolate because the fit isn't on par for me. Drivability and source pairing, these are very similar to the H200 in that way. Everything pushes them very easily. There's no issues there. One thing that I'd be careful about, these have a little bit more excitement up top. And so if your source is a very more upper mids or treble oriented or very clean and clinical sound, these will sound a little bit too intense. So find something that's a little bit on the warmer side, maybe a little bit more bassy, and these will help. Now, keep in mind that my fit and isolation issues could be affecting those impressions, and the NH200 didn't fit me very well, so do keep that in mind. Going forward, how do the NH20 sound? The bass is very flat and lean, and it's very well controlled, but the sub bass rolls off quite a bit. I found that they didn't have a whole lot of body impact punch and slam. They are a very more leaning linear until you get to about 60 or 80 hertz, and then they drop off. There's not a lot of sub bass with these. I found that overall, though, technicality wise, they did a really good job of giving you the information that's in the bass. They just didn't have a lot of naturalism in the bass. The lower mid range, there's a tuck around 300 hertz that removes warmth and body. And then the upper mid climb is quite forward and intense. They're very clear and shouty. It was too much for my ears. They were a little bit too much. Now, keep in mind, though, this tuning could be being affected by the fit and by the isolation that I kind of had that was lacking. And so the mid range is very much it's very clear and it's very vivid, but it also is shouty and it was just too much for me and it had a lot of intensity to it. The treble, the peaks and dips from 6 hertz and 10 hertz it gives a sensation of these being like hot tamales. There's a lot of detail and a lot of sharpness, but it's too much. They're very intense sounding. And again, I do think that my fit and isolation played a part in this. I just wasn't getting a very good seal. And so I found that the NH20 just didn't sound quite complete, refined, and defined when it came to the bass, the mids, and the treble. They're very mid forward and very lean sounding, but I'm going to say most of that was because of the small size and the isolation problems that I had. Very neutral bright with the high beams on. They're analytical, they're revealing, but they're also unforgiving and fatiguing. When it comes to the sound stage, I found that the width and depth was pretty good. And they had nice abilities of small, medium, and large, and they even kind of got into that grand size for a closeback. It wasn't the widest, but it did a decent job of showing differences. Depth was pretty good as well, and I found that the layering was really good. It was very, very nitpicky. You could really pick and choose where things were and go, that's right there, that's right there. And it's a little bit more pinpoint precise than the H200 in that regard. And I found it followed things across the track really well from side to side. Exiting and entering also did a really good job. As far as the details, this thing really picks out a lot of details. You're not going to miss anything. There's a lot there. Resolution wise is also pretty good. It's a little bit on the sharp side and a little forthright, but it does a good job for what it does. It just does it very intensely. And tone and timbre, a little bit on the thin side. It doesn't have as much of a natural warmth to it. It's not a very fun listen. And I'm going to say a lot of that has to do with the fit and isolation issues that I had. All right, now let's change gears for something different for a moment and talk about an IEM. And that's the KB Ear Tourbillon Pro. Now, this will set you back $99. I want to thank KeepHifi for sending this over. I do greatly appreciate it. It's got a stylish unboxing with a Tourbillon watch face. Inside it, you get a cylindrical carry case. And this is a nice little carrying case. Pocketable. It's going to fit in most bags. It's going to protect. And it does a good job. It fits everything that you need. You get your little cleaning cloth. You get your IEMs. And then you also get some tips and a cleaning tool. All that crams inside this little carrying case. There is no pocket inside the carrying case, which is kind of a bummer. I wish that there was a little pocket to kind of store things. But overall, I like this carrying case. All right, so the tips. Tips you get, tips you get a bunch. You get some triclarion tips, which are actually the tips that I use, and I love triclarion tips. And so that was a nice touch that they included the triclarions. And then you get some silicone tips, which are your standard grape olive shaped narrow bore tip. And I found that the narrow bore silicone tips really made things sound very bassy and V-shaped, and so that's the reason why I went with the triclarian tip. It just kind of evened things out a little bit, and we'll talk about that. All right, so the Tourbillon Pro carries on the watch face theme, which is kind of cool. It's kind of hard to see on camera, and you get a all metal shell, smooth back with a somewhat aggressive angle and a decent length of a nozzle. You definitely are going to want to use that cleaning cloth. These things are fingerprint magnets. I find them to be somewhat eye-catchy. It's just a design that you don't normally see. And this one's actually well done with its glass faceplate. Comfort, yeah, that's kind of hit or miss. I found that I have to readjust them quite a bit. And after about an hour or so, that nozzle angle kind of gets uncomfortable. But decently, for an hour, that's pretty good. Cable, it looks nice. It's lightweight, but unfortunately, it kind of tangles a little easily. The cinch doesn't stay in place. It just kind of moves around and slowly will wiggle downward. But for the most part, this is a decent cable. I don't mind it. I wish that it didn't tangle as much, but it's nice and lightweight, looks good, and it matches kind of the aesthetics of the Tourbillon Pro. So I don't mind it at all. Source pairing, I found that just like the headphones, the Tourbillon Pro is actually really easy to drive, but this is actually really source dependent. I found that on warm sources, it gets very muddy bass and it has a smooth upper. On cold sources, more analytical sources, it's a tighter bass, but the uppers become shouty. And then on a more neutral, warm source, got a little bit better balance. So I was rather surprised at that. It played with pretty much anything. And, all dongles drove it, desktops, DAPs, it didn't matter that. It was just, what do you prefer as the actual source to use? And so if you want something more bassy and muddy, bassy, just kind of get the impact, punch and slam, and you want smoother uppers, go with a warmer source. If you want really tight bass and you don't mind some shoutiness in the uppers, go with something more cold. But, if you really want a little bit more balance, find something that's more neutral, natural, and kind of go with that. And so it was just kind of a hit or miss, depending on your tracks, your source for them. Sound impressions. The Tourbillon Pro is one of those tunings where you can see the intention, but also you can see where things go sideways, and you can see it kind of quickly. So the bass, there's definitely a mid bass lift well above like my preference. You get a very warm, punchy, thick, fun. It's not really the cleanest. It cleans up a little bit with certain sources, but I just found it's more about the mid bass. There's a lot of punch, a lot of slam. There's a lot of impact there. Sub bass, there's okay. You get a little bit of rumble and grumble, but this is all about the mid bass and the upper bass. There definitely is some bleeding into the lower mid-range, adds some body and some warmth, but it can get a little bit congested. It's a little too thick at times, depending on your source and your song. And then the upper mids dip significantly. Vocals sit backward. They sit way back here, and clarity isn't the cleanest. There's not a whole lot of just an open feeling. It's more about warmth, and kind of everything sounds a little bit on the veiled side. And then in around 6 to 8K, there's a significant rise. And that adds in sparkle and bite, but it also is prone to sharpness and sibilance and some hotness. And so it's just kind of a hodgepodge of unevenness in the mid-range. You got the kind of more veiled, a little bit more relaxed lower mids and main mids, and then at 6 to 8K, you get in that upper mids and lower treble region, you get that shoutiness and that kind of just sparkle, bite, energy, and crispness. And the upper treble rolls off, which gives a more intimate than expansive presentation, but it also puts a more emphasis on that upper mid-range and lower treble, which kind of forces that to be the feature. On the technical side, I found that the stage is kind of intimate. It's not very big at all. Imaging is good enough for the price tag of $100, but it's not really that good. It follows things across the stage. There's no judders, stutters, stumbles, bumbles, anything like that, but it's not really the most refined. You can kind of follow things from side to side and as they enter and exit, but it's not the most defined of imaging. It's good enough. Depth is kind of shallow. Layering is adequate. Um, Details, you're going to get what you normally hear, but you're not going to explore anything new. And resolution is okay, but those upper mids and lower treble region, it's very sharp and very forthright in its presentation. Tone and timbre, you get this lower octaves are very lush and kind of warm sounding, and then the upper octaves get very thin sounding and sound a little bit unnatural. So overall, I found that the KB Ear Tourbillon Pro is a warm, cold V-shaped sound. It has boosted mid bass, warm lower mid range, recessed upper mids, and bright lower treble and relaxed upper treble. It's a strange presentation. It's kind of fun, definitely not neutral. It can be enjoyable at times, and it can be not analytical ever. It's one of those IEMs where I think, why do I like this? And it's because it's kind of fun to listen. And why don't I like this? And that's definitely because it's not accurate at all. All right, so before we move on to getting back and doing comparisons of the headphones, I want to talk quickly about the Tourbillon Pro and the IEM that I forgot to get out to do this review. But that is the Acous Audio Rock Lobster. So if you're going to compare the Tourbillon Pro to a bassy headphone IEM, that would be the Acous Audio Rock Lobster. And even though the Tourbillon Pro is somewhat warm and fun sounding at times, the Acous Audio Rock Lobster is more genre focused. And these two aren't tuned the same, but they share a similar philosophy. I find that in the bass, the Rock Lobster is cleaner, it's more controlled, and it's better textured. The Tourbillon Pro mid bass can get muddy. The Rock Lobster stays very punchy without falling apart. In the mid range, the Rock Lobster is warm, full, textured, and forward enough to keep the vocals alive. Tourbillon Pro, the mids are more recessed, veiled, and somewhat distant sounding. In the treble, the Rock Lobster is smoother and non-fatiguing, whereas the Tourbillon Pro is more bright, peaky, and sibilant, especially in that lower treble region. And in the technicalities, the Rock Lobster wins across the board. It's wider staging, it has better imaging, is better depth, and it's just a more natural tone and timbre. And overall, it's more detailed and resolving. And I just find that the Rock Lobster is the better all-around IEM, especially if you listen to rock and metal. The Tourbillon Pro is a bit of a quirky wild card. It's fun, but it's inconsistent. And so, it's kind of hard to say what genre of music it's good for because it depends on your source, depends on your tips, depends on your on the track. It depends on how it's mixed and mastered. There's a lot of other things that play into the Tourbillon Pro that makes it a little harder to go, this is a good for these genres, whereas the Rock Lobster is good for rock and metal. All right, so let's go back to the headphones. Let's talk about my headphone choice for analytical reference, and that is the Austrian Audio HiX 60. First and foremost, build. The build is significantly better than both the H200 and the NH20, and it folds up. It's all metal. Pads are replaceable, says LNR, which is a nice feature. It's extremely comfortable. I can wear these for hours upon hours. And when I did get them, I did not have to really work on the clamp. The clamp was just right there for me. Couple of notes. The HiX 60 does have a little bit of a leaner sound signature. The lower mid-range can sound slightly scooped. It's a little bit tucked, just a little bit. It does have a little bit elevated upper mids and treble, but it still sounds very natural and tonally accurate. It's a microscope, but I enjoy the sound. It's one of those headphones that is a microscope that I can actually listen to for hours just as an enjoyment. Not all microscope headphones can I do that with. Its strengths are exceptional clarity, minimal bass masking, forward presence, and bright, incisive treble. Weaknesses, it does have a little bit leaner of a note weight. It can be fatiguing to some ears. It's not to mine. And it's not ideal for casual listening, though I still use them in that way because I enjoy them. When I want to know what's happening in a track, I reach for the HiX 60. So how does the HiX 60 compare to the Acous NH20? The NH20 tries to live in the same neighborhood as the HiX 60, lean, bright, and analytical, but it unfortunately is a little bit too extreme and a little less refined. The HiX 60, incisive and natural, the NH20, bright, clinical, hotter treble, and thinner mids. How does the HiX 60 compare to the H200? The H200 has a little bit fuller, smoother, a little bit more of a natural note weight to things. But the HiX 60 is more revealing and has a more ruthless presentation while at the same time being very natural and accurate. The H200 is easier to live with. The HiX 60 is the better analytical tool. How do you compare the NH20 to the H200? The NH20, brighter, thinner, more aggressive. The H200, more balanced, more natural, and more coherent. So to wrap up the comparison for the Tourbillon Pro to the Rock Lobster, just to recap, the Tourbillon Pro, warm, quirky, and consistent. Rock Lobster, warm, energetic, and controlled. And the Rock Lobster is the better well-around IEM for rock and metal. All right, so Tourbillon Pro, comparing it to pretty much any other IEM, it's a wild card. It's not neutral. It's not analytical. It's enjoyable when you're in the mood for something different, but it probably won't be your first pick. So of the four, the Austrian Audio HiX 60 still remains my analytical reference, and it reveals everything, and it's why I use it daily. The Acous NH20, it follows a similar philosophy, but with more intensity, more flaws at a cheaper price tag. The Atom Audio H200, it's the most balanced and the easiest way to live, especially with the VST. That is the value changer of these headphones. If you have the ability to use VST, get the H200. If you want something more detailed and resolving, a little bit better of a monitor, and you can afford the more price tag, get the HiX 60. The KB Ear Tourbillion Pro, fun, wildcard, warm, quirky, enjoyable, but you have to be in the right mood. And the Acous Audio Rock Lobster is the best genre of focused IEM, especially for rock, metal, punk, EDM, all that sort of stuff. So if you want a microscope, HiX 60. If you want a bright clinical monitor, NH20. If you want a natural grounded studio headphone, H200. And if you want something fun, quirky, Tourbillon Pro. And then you have that Rock Lobster. So with all that being said, I am done with the review and comparisons. Hopefully you can follow all that. If not, go back to the beginning and check it out after the live stream. Let's get to some questions, comments, and concerns. All right, so thank you very much for everybody joining. I do greatly appreciate it. I know it's Valentine's Day, and I know that it's a Saturday and it's early in the morning or late in the afternoon or late evening, wherever you are. Maybe it's still Friday for, I don't know, wherever you are in the world. I do greatly appreciate you joining, and thank you very much. All right, so Jeff B., thanks for sharing your impressions of gear. You're very welcome. Very happy to do it. It's my pleasure. Hop Singer. Happy Saturday, Dave. It's a good day because, as we all know, a good day starts with good coffee. Ethiopian, in my case, freshly roasted. Hey, excellent. Ethiopian coffee is good stuff. And today I am on my usual of Pete's coffee, well, actually Pete's espresso. All right, so set that to the side here. All right. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but HG, may God bless you richly. Love your videos. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the channel content. It's greatly appreciated for the well wishes. All right, so free Foya. Yo, sir, it's been a while. How have you been this week, sir? I've been actually really good. It has been a little while. It has been 7 days since the previous live stream. Work was busy this week. I do get a long weekend. I have Monday off, which is going to be a nice touch for Valentine's weekend. Plus, my wife has her birthday upcoming, and so we're going to take a Monday and spend some time together. So it's been a good week and deserve a long weekend, in my opinion. Vegan greetings from Manila, and then Stop Hop Singer asks, with the Austrian audios, have you compared the 60 with 55 or the 65? Thoughts, thanks. No, I have not. I do not own those. They have not been provided for review, and I haven't heard them. The only other Austrian audios that I've heard, other than some of their, I've heard their DAC and amps at an audio show, and I heard the orchestra. I think it was called the orchestra, or organette, something like that. They're a really high, expensive one. I heard that at an audio show. Other than that, I haven't heard any other Austrian audio products. Good question, though. Would love to be able to get some more in, if possible. Very curious to see. All right, while we wait for some questions, I am going to put some of this gear away. So never mind the noises. I do wish that of the H200 and the NH20 that they folded. That is one thing that I do really like about my Hayek 60s is that they fold. It makes them very easy to take along as a monitor and throw them around. They're very durable, and so they just make for a easier storage. But the NH20 having the little carrying case does make it nice as well. That makes it a little bit forgiving as far as, since they don't fold up, you do get a carrying case, and the carrying case is pretty small. Whereas you don't get any of that with the H200s. They don't fold, and you don't have any storage. So a little bit of a bummer in that regard. Plus, it would be nice to have a shorter cable option with the H200 as well. And I understand the studio you use longer cables. I totally understand that. But I think that a lot of people that are going to purchase these at this price point, that want to experiment with monitors, may use them and need a shorter cable. So it would be nice just to have that option to be able to have it included. But with all that said, the box is really small, so it doesn't take a whole lot to store them if you are just going to store them in the box. And it just throws in the box really easy. Free Foya. Nice studio like setup. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy the setup, and I really like it. And I have found that it's very hard to get me out of this studio. I am very much I like just sitting in here and listening to music. It's something that I used to do a long time ago, was spend a lot of time just listening to music, and you couldn't get me away from it. And then my setup kind of, I don't know, just kind of wore on me. And it became kind of just a spot where I did my audio stuff. And so it wasn't that I didn't want to be in there. It was just that I now I love just sitting here and listening to music. I like my new desk. I like the way it's set up. Um, has it taken a little bit to adjust? Yes, because I don't have as much of a setup as I had before. Like some of the where the storages are on the desk behind me is a little bit smaller, so I can't put as much stuff. It's not as, but overall, I like the actual setup of it, and I like the way that it sounds on camera. All right, so stop hop singer. Time to admit my ignorance. With Atom Audio, you mentioned VST. Are you referring to like a plug-in audio codec of sorts? Yes. So a VST is different than like regular EQ or PEQ type stuff, or DSPs, where you can go in and you can alter it and you can change all the ranges. A VST is a specific codec that the manufacturers make for that headphone. And so then you use it with a program like Audiophile Studio. I think Rune has the abilities, and some of the other playback music management programs have the ability to use a VST. And so when you plug it in, the VST changes and makes those settings in your system. You can still play back as Bit Perfect and all that, but it tunes that headphone. And so if you were to use a VST with another headphone, it's not going to sound right. It's going to make a bunch of alterations. Why? Because it's tuned specifically for the H200, and it's the specific tuning that Atom Audio wants the H200 to sound like. And as mentioned earlier in the review, why didn't they tune it that way? It's because it's not universal. And so, it wouldn't sound good on everything being played back. So VSTs are unique in that regard. And I don't use a VST when monitoring. Some people are able to. So I do my own EQ when I'm monitoring at church, and so I do not use VSTs in that way. The best way to describe it is VST. It's a virtual studio technology. It's a software plugin that processes audio in real time. It can add effects, simulate hardware, or change the sound of your music or headphones, just like inserting a physical device into the signal chain, but entirely in software built specifically for that product. Hopefully that makes sense for you. If I remember correctly, I think Odyssey also has VSTs for some of their gear, um, or they used to. One of the two. There was a couple of other manufacturers I came across that had VSTs, but I've never really played around with them. Atom Audio H200 was the first time that I really sat down and you know gave them a true listen. Good questions. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, so I haven't seen Tom yet, or Paul, excuse me. But here's what we currently have on the review schedule. Most of you have probably been aware, but this is kind of in the order that they're going to come out, just so you know. This is actual scheduled stuff. So we have the Meze Audio 99 Classic V2s. Those are going to be coming out on Wednesday. We have the AU and AC 55, the Moondrop Old Fashioned, and the Rose Salsa Rose Technic Distant Mountain 10th Anniversary. That's going to be next week's live stream. And then we have the Tantrum Soda. We have the Fosse Audio DS3. And we have the Juzzier Harrier, the Dunu DN142, DN242, the Fio Warmer R2R, and the DM15 R2R from Fio. So that's all the stuff that we have in right now. There are a few things in transition, but all of those things are scheduled to be rolling out over the next few weeks. So if we don't get any other gear in, we'll have to figure something out. I'm sure some gear will roll in, though. I think I saw something pop up here. Did I miss any questions, comments, or concerns, thoughts, or ideas? Doesn't look it. All right, so something that you probably, if you follow along the channel and you look at community posts on a daily basis, something you have noticed that I've been asking about, and we did a recent poll on, is review processes and methodologies and terms and definitions and things like that. And I just want to point you to the top of the chat. There is links to my review process, my terms, my music references, and things like that. And it's not just a link that gives you, here's my 10 points of why. It actually explains the process and why I do it and what I do and what I'm looking for in music, and defines the terms. And the reason why I do it that way is so that every single review video, I don't have to go out and go, okay, this is what this is the, XXX, and this is how I do it. It's just, here you go. Here's the quick read. Go read it for yourself. Go find it, type of stuff. And it's there all the time whenever you want to look at it. So, I highly recommend that you go and you look at that and learn to understand me. It's not there to say I'm the best, or that's this is the only way that reviewers should do it. This is how I do it. This is why, so you understand me better as a reviewer. And so those tools are there for you to get to know me better. And then I really recommend that if you watch other reviewers, if you follow other channels, and most of you probably do. Why? Because it's best to get thoughts and opinions from multiple sources, understand their processes, and really ask them, hey, what's your review process? How do you come up with your impression? What tracks do you use and why? What are you listening for in these tracks? Things like that, and really get to know them so you understand them better. You don't have to call them out. You don't have to be rude about it, but understand what they are saying, and light bulbs will come on as you listen. All right, so let's see. Stop Hop Singers, looking forward to Meze. Have to head out, but y'all have a great day on Valentine's Day. You too, Stop Hop Singer. Thank you for swinging by. Do greatly appreciate it. And I'm glad that you came by. Good questions. All right, it is a little bit of a quiet crowd today, a little bit of a smaller crowd. And I totally understand that. We have a lot going on Valentine's Day here, and all that kind of stuff. Free for you. Yeah, I think Moondrop. Let's see here. Free for you. Let's see. Free for you. Let me get back to you. So Stop Hop Singer, I know you have to leave. So some of these reviewers these days seem to put out 4 to 5 a week. There is no way you can do a real review of products that fast. Sorry to hog the chat. So that's why it's so important to ask them, what's your review process? Are you just listening, first impressions, give it 24 hours, and then write your review for the next day and release it? Are you, do you have particular things? Do you have a repeatable process? How do you do your comparisons? In the community posts recently, I put in a list of what questions I ask reviewers. Really find out how they do things. It's really important to understand that, because if you don't understand their process, you're just going to assume that everybody does things the same way, and they don't. And they also don't. They also don't define terms the same way either, and that's also a problem. So make sure you understand that. All right, so getting back to Free FOIA, I think Moondrop loose. I think Moondrop loose it this time around. I heard the sound of Tantrum, and it is the end game sound house for me. What's your thoughts? Mid learning, I feel like the vocals are a lot more forward. I'm not going to give any thoughts as to my impressions of gear that I currently have in for review. And the reason for that is the process is still in the works of me making impressions. And two, I don't want to spoil anything. So as far as has Tantrum and Moondrop made a progression in their tuning, and how sounds, I will say this: Moondrop has been fairly consistent over the years as to what type of presentation they like. Tantrum has evolved their house sound a little bit, and lately I have enjoyed Tantrum more than I used to. As far as Moondrop, it's always been kind of hit or miss for me, depending on which presentation they're going for. Some of their budget stuff, especially their budget stuff, I haven't enjoyed near as much as their mid-tier stuff. And then I haven't really enjoyed most of the Moondrop planar gear either. So kind of depends. Now, headphone wise, also kind of applies that way for Moondrop. Hopefully that answers your question. Sorry that's a little bit on the vague side, but I don't want to spoil anything. Unfortunately, you mentioned that vocals can feel a lot more forward. That is a tuning that has been being pushed a lot lately. And when you really start pushing 2 to 5K, especially around 3K, which is pin gain, that really affects tonality, how much body, and accuracy. And so in all ears kind of react a little bit differently. I'm really sensitive to that area. And so, it can be very much shouty and too forward and just not sound balanced and cohesive with the rest of the mix. So, that 2 to 5K region is the kind of the general area that our ears focus on when it comes to sound. And so that can be very sensitive to some. Manufacturers know that, and so they really pinpoint that area. Origin or Fission, I enjoyed the Origin more. I thought the Origin was more neutral and natural sounding, whereas the Fission is a little bit more fun. The Fission's a good IEM, but I enjoyed the Origin better. I thought the Origin was the more refined and more accurate of the two. But if you enjoyed the Fission, it's not a bad headphone, or IEM, excuse me. I still have something to put away. Completely forgot about you. All right. By the way, IEM tips. One of my favorite type of tip to use is the triclarion. And I find that off time with the triclarian, if something has a little bit shorter of a nozzle, the triclarian kind of helps insert it and make it fit in my ear a little bit better. So if you're struggling with that, try the triclarian. Also, if something has a kind of a more V-shaped type of sound signature and you want to balance it out a little bit, the triclarians also help do that because of their wide bore. So triclarian is one of my go-to tips. Does not want to. The struggles are real today, I will tell you. So today, I woke up, I got up around 8 o'clock, which is pretty typical for a Saturday, and especially when I have a live stream at 10. And Saturdays are my day to sleep in. So normally I'm up at 6:30 in the morning. But anyways, 8 o'clock is about the usual time I get up on a Saturday. I came in, started my computer, and my laptop took like 10 minutes to boot up. And it's normally like really fast. So I don't know what was going on there, but I was like really concerned. And so I plugged it in, I got it started, checked messages, and made sure everything was good to go for the live stream, and went over my thoughts and notes for the reviews. And all of a sudden, my laptop just decides, oh, I'm going to reboot. And so I was like, oh, that's not good. So while that was going on, I went to set up all the lights and all that kind of stuff for the stream, and put my microphone up, put my tripod for my phone camera, and I could not get my tripod to lock in place. I couldn't figure out why. Come to find out, one of the snaps for the legs was broken, so I had to repair that. Got that all fixed, and then I got ready. Did all the personal stuff, made coffee, did all that kind of stuff around the house. Came back in and made sure my laptop was back up so I could read the notes and all that kind of stuff. I had it all set. And with 5 minutes to go before the live stream, my laptop decides I'm not going to work again. And so it just dies and reboots. And I'm like, what is up with this? My MSI never gives me this problem. In fact, I had just been bragging about you. And so it thankfully didn't take 10 minutes to reboot, but it took 4 minutes. And I got it all back up and running with like 30 seconds before the live stream was to go live. And now it keeps doing this weird thing where it keeps going to sleep, and I have to keep activating the screens. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to fiddle around with that today and get my laptop back up. A possible HDD or SDD mess up. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's just that it needs an update, and that is something funky like that. Because it literally was working great last night. So I'm sure that it's just a bugaboo somewhere that'll be easy to fix. So I've had issues before with other products. So, but yeah, it's been a fun day so far. And on top of that, in the comments, I got mentioned that I was clueless, and what was the other word? I was dumber than a box of rocks, which I thought hilarious. So those two comments from people on older videos, that was fun. Kind of wish that the one person that said I was dumber than a box of rocks had been a little more creative, considering that today's Valentine's Day. They could have said something like, I'm dumber than a box of chocolates. But it is what it is. People have their opinions about reviewers, and when they don't agree with you, they tend to shoot their mouth off and be mean. And I wish that people just would be respectful, and you can agree to disagree. You can voice your opinion. I'm open to criticism, but you don't need to attack in that way. All right. So, anyways, with all that being said, I know you all have a busy day. It's Saturday. Weather's nice, at least here in the middle of the U.S. And some of you have plans for Valentine's Day. Some of you have plans for other things, and so it's kind of seems to be a quieter day in the chat. So let's do last call for questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, desires, all that kind of stuff. Toss it in the chat real quick. We'll give you about a couple more minutes here, and then we'll call it quits for the day. Any recommendation of dongle DACs below 50? Mine's getting static. Yeah, you could get the Kiwi Ears Allegra Mini. That thing's fantastic. You could get, if you want to stay 50 or less, there's several others. Let me go over here to my list real quick and make sure I'm not telling you something that's well over the $50 price point. There's the Kiwi Ears Allegra Mini. There's the Tantrum Stargate 2. There's the Periodic Audio Rhodium, which comes in at $50. You have the let's see what else we got. Those would probably be my go-tos. If you can go a few dollars more, and you might be able to find it a little cheaper now, the Hibi FC3 is excellent. And then you also have the Dunu DTC 480. Both of those brand new were $70, but you could probably get them used for something a little cheaper, or brand new. They might lower the price on that. Another one to consider, which is $60, is the Fosse Audio DS2. You might be able to get that one a little cheaper since the DS3 is coming out. So those are some options there. Lucas, I've been watching your channel for a while. I managed to snag a pair of JBL Studio 630s and a free definitive sub for $289, which has been nice. What AV do you recommend below $300? I have no clue. That's not my channel focus, unfortunately. The only speakers I listen to are the ones that you see back here. I do own a couple other speakers, but the Wharfdale D310s are my speaker of choice. And I use a shit Vidar and a Fosse Audio P4 preamp going into my Mytek Liberty DAC 2 as the DAC. Speakers are not really my thing. I may review a few more in the future, but at this time, I really don't have anything. And as far as AV setups go, out in the living room, which is the only place that my wife allows any sort of speakers, which is on the, with the TV, is a sound bar. It's a Klipsch sound bar with a subwoofer. That's my whole experience. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have much of a recommendation. I'm sorry. All right, so with all that being said, I'm going to end it on that bombshell, as Jeremy Clarkson says on Top Gear. So thank you for everybody joining, and appreciate y'all watching. And if you're curious about the NF Acous NH20, the Atom Audio H200, or the KB Ear Tourbillon Pro, go up to the top of the and watch the reviews of those. And then if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them down in the comments, and I'll get to them when possible. And with all that being said, you all have yourself a great Valentine's Day. Don't forget to check out the links, and don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if you want more more content like this, hit the subscribe button. So thanks very much. Don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.